session underway. Roll call, Mr. Clerk. Ames.
Here.
Bonner.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Patrick.
Here.
Kroll.
Here.
Showman.
Here.
Tatman. Here. Trutchell. Here. Noah, please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, everyone's received their minutes. Do we have a motion? Mr. Bonner?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second by Mrs. Packard. Roll call. Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman. Here. Trutchell. Yes. Here.
Here.
Okay, we've got reports of committees. Mrs. Gray. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It's the first
Pro Tem
name.
Trutchell. The Human Resources Committee has actually 4 items on the agenda, 3 that are on the written agenda that you have in front of you, and 1 that I am bringing to you tonight, which will be item number 11. It will be an ordinance that addresses temporarily suspend the maximum hours established for one part-time security officer for the Chillicothe Municipal Court as established by section 151.02 of the codified ordinances of Chillicothe, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. And at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to waive the 3-day receipt rule.
Second by Mrs. Ames. Roll call. Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell. Yes. And that'll be item 9.
Thank you, President. Item number 4 is the first reading of an ordinance to extend the hiring period of 2 part-time seasonal employees from October 31st, 2014 to December 31st, 2014. And before we continue forward with this, I would like to ask the mayor what the status is. If you know with these particular employees, are they still employed? And I also defer to Auditor Feeney in reference to what we just discussed, whether or not they are still employed.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, then what I will do is we'll let it read, go for the first reading tonight. Item number 5, which is an ordinance to appropriate $7,968 for the city's wellness program through United Healthcare. At the appropriate time, I will ask to waive the 3-read rule. I do have a comment in reference to this particular request. It did come to us very, very last minute, and I would request of the mayor for your staff to understand the difference between approving funds, what council does with that approval, and the appropriation of funds. We approved those funds back in May, and here we are at the very last minute, literally, getting these appropriated when it should have been appropriated shortly after the funds were approved. And so I would ask if the staff would be made aware, made cognizant of that process so that they understand, so they're not coming to us at the last minute to be able to get these done. And again, like I said, I will ask to waive the 3-read rule at the appropriate time. Item number 6 is the first reading on ordinance to transfer funds from civil service salaries and fringes to civil service outside contracts for the purpose of adequately funding the Civil Service Commission for the remainder of calendar year 2014. I will refer at this time to Auditor Feeney to give further explanation on that, and I will allow that to stand as first reading this evening.
Well, so my comment on that is that we are now paying unemployment out of salary and fringe in that department. So essentially, if this money is transferred tonight, I will basically have to do an emergency request to appropriate more money to pay for the unemployment. So I don't know if these, I don't know what bills generated this request, if they're for outstanding bills or if they're for anticipated bills, but it would impose, I suppose, a bit of a burden on me and this body because we may even have to reconvene sooner than our next regularly scheduled meeting.
I do know that there were bills that were presented at the Civil Service
And those
Commission
have been
meeting.
paid. Those have been paid.
Those have been paid.
This transfer of money was to fund the anticipated testing that we would be doing this year that we're now going to be doing next year. So I think that we could just completely take this off the table.
The Civil Service Commission did meet on Monday, the 17th, and I believe that it was a fairly productive meeting, and they have now set their schedule for the first Thursday of every month at 4:30 at the Transit Building. So for council members who would like to be in attendance for those meetings, it will be the first Thursday of every month, beginning with the 4th of December at 4:30, and that will be held at the Transit Building. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Gray. Mr. Prohl.
Safety Service Committee has one item on tonight's agenda, which is item number 1, which is currently at third reading, to appropriate $14,889 to cover fire department vehicle repair, fire insurance costs, and for the remainder of the calendar year 2014. The fire chief is still working on these numbers to try to reduce this amount. So at the appropriate time, we'll ask that we not read. I'll make a motion that we not read. So I make a motion that we not read.
Seconded by Mrs. Neal. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Truttle.
Yes. Is that it, Mr. Prohl?
That concludes mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Patrick.
Thank you, President Trutchell. The Transit/Utilities Committee has 2 items I would like to add to tonight's agenda. And the first one is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation and accepting $14,727 in grant funds. I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3-day receipt rule.
Seconded by Mrs. Gray. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Truttle.
Yes. And that will be item 10 on tonight's agenda.
Okay. This is actually assignment number 14-156 from the council president, and it is authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract and participate in the Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Grant Program. And as a result, we get to receive $14,727 from calendar year 2013. This has a deadline of the signed contract going back to ODOT of December 1st. So at the appropriate time, I will ask that we waive the 3-read rule and pass this tonight. Secondly, I would like to add another ordinance. This one is authorizing the transfer of funds in the amount of $15,000 from bus salaries to vehicle repair within the transit department. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3-day receipt rule.
Second by Mr. Bonner. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Truttle.
Yes. That'll be item 11 on tonight's agenda.
And what this ordinance does, it is not appropriating additional money. This is money that's already been appropriated, and it's transferring it from the salary line item in transit to the vehicle repair, and this will pay some outstanding bills. So at the appropriate time, I will ask that we waive the 3-day receipt on this, no, the 3-read rule on this one as well. I would like to commend the law director's office because I actually got both these ordinances late Thursday night, and with the deadline of December 1st, it put a big burden on them to get that paperwork done and to us tonight. I would ask in the future that when we've got something that's a time-sensitive piece of legislation, that we get it as soon as possible. This is a yearly thing that we do, so I'm assuming somewhere we've got a master list of when these grants have to be applied for, and we can start doing them on time, in a timely fashion. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. The Parks and Rec Committee has one item on the agenda tonight. That's the second reading to authorize the transfer of Parks and Rec capital funds for the cost related to the replacement of a damaged desk and a computer from the recent flooding we had down there. And we'll let this go to three reading and hopefully support this next meeting. That concludes my report.
Mrs. Ames.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Trutchell. Development has one item on the agenda tonight. Item number 3 is the first reading of an ordinance to accept and appropriate the sum of $3,127.27 received as payment of a depreciated chip grant lien held by the city of Chillicothe. Edmund Reed received a grant from the 2006 chip. This grant depreciates over time down to 15%, which is the number that's reflected in this tonight. Ms. Reed paid this off to get the lien taken off her house. The money will go back into the chip revolving fund account. At the appropriate time, I will ask to waive the 3-read rule and pass this tonight so the money can be put back into the chip fund as soon as possible. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Ames. Anyone else? The Finance Committee has 2 items on tonight's agenda. Item number 7 is to amend section 11801 of the codified ordinance providing for the creation of position of deputy treasurer within the city treasurer's office. Council wishes to appoint the City Council Finance Committee chairperson to act as deputy treasurer for the sole purpose of signing checks and financial documents in the absence of the city treasurer and at the request of the city auditor. As you all recall, if you attended the meetings, our treasurer asked for that position be filled by someone who would have to pay. We elected not to do that, and the committee has determined that council chair it's only appropriate to do that. And that saves us some money there. Item 8 is to appropriate funds for the purpose of making payroll, fringe pension, and bond payments for the remainder of 2014. And at the appropriate time, I will request that we waive the 3 reading rule to do that. And that concludes my report. Which brings us to reports of officials. Mayor Everson.
Thank you, Council Pro Tem President. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who participated in the Light the Park event last Friday night, in particular Councilwoman Ames, who just did a tireless job of pulling that all together with a good team of Dave Strickland, Randy Davies, and Jim Dearson. All expenses in that event were donated by businesses and service organizations, and no expense to the city. So if this event's the start of a long-term tradition in Chillicothe that continues to build year after year. As I said in the budget meeting, we will have open enrollment for insurance sign-up December the 3rd. Encouraging council to, if they're on a PPO plan, take a hard look at HSA so that the city will continue to build on savings with that program. There will be representatives from Tomlinson Insurance there all day long to explain the benefits of those plans, and they'll be held at different city facilities throughout the day. I will circulate a schedule of events for that as soon as I get back to the office. Civil Service Commission last week, as Councilwoman Gray said in her statements, one thing that came up in there was some training for new commissioner Jim Cutright. All 3 commissioners attended that training today. We wanted to get that underway as soon as possible. There was a public notice issued on Friday that would be today. That was the only day that the instructor and the commissioners had to get it together, so that is done. Lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about discussions that I'll be having with my staff in the upcoming weeks. now that the budget's kind of winding down. And that'll revolve around shared services. There's three aspects to that: manpower, equipment, and the transition of equipment. With regard to manpower, particularly in the AFSCME contract, we've made a lot of headway in eliminating some barriers to doing that through the negotiations. At the same time, getting on the table and discussing past practices that also inhibited the cities to utilize manpower across appointing authorities. And so that, now that that has opened up a little bit, there's certain areas where manpower in the city is underutilized that could be put to work in a different department, being paid for that department, but the fringes and all the other fixed costs will still be absorbed by the department there, since they're paying for that anyway. It's just better utilization of our workforce, and there'll be some hard discussions coming up with the staff on how we'll go ahead about implementing that in light of the recent. Second one is equipment. When we talk about vehicles in particular, we have aged and dying force of city vehicles that have a long and distinguished tenure with the city. And how we go about in utilizing that equipment is much the same as manpower. I think that there are certain areas where equipment sits dormant that could be used or is duplicated in another department. So we'll be talking about how we can facilitate that for better utilization of equipment across the city. And then finally, dealing with the aged fleet that we have, transition of equipment. The auditor and I had a conversation this afternoon that I think we both agree that there's some creative ways that we can replenish the fleet without putting the city under. First of all, we don't have to buy new for everything that we buy. Pickup trucks, this past year we bought a used pickup truck for the water department. It's a 2008 model, performing a lot better than the 1998 pickup truck that it replaced. But in how we finance those and buying used, I think we can save some money and maybe even tweak money slowly for vehicle repair that seems to be growing year over year in budget, and issue that towards payments on replacement vehicles as we go forward. And then one thing that we turned around the police department this year was not to trade in used police vehicles, but filter those down to other departments and eliminate the old vehicles that are used in the other departments, like engineering, for something that's high in maintenance and low usage, but we can get on a vehicle that's used in another department that's run its course and can be replaced to extend the life of those vehicles and circulate newer vehicles into different departments. So we're going to be having several meetings across the board with that, with all departments, and try and get better utilization out of our assets for the city. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Hewson. Auditor Feeney.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Petruszel. I'll start my report tonight with legislation before you. Item number 5. This was an emergency request, and my thanks to the Law Director's Office for pushing it through quickly. Just a little background. Through our health insurance program with United Healthcare, we received $10,000 to implement wellness programs, but we do not receive $10,000 until we spend the $10,000. Before we can spend the $10,000, we must appropriate the $10,000. So, what you have before you is the appropriation for the remaining balance, which essentially, if we don't appropriate tonight, we give away. It will be fully reimbursed to the general fund. And essentially what that money goes to is prizes, gifts, that sort of thing for employees who are participating in the wellness program. As a side note, I'd like to recognize the the auditors and income tax departments, because 100% of the staff down there are participating in all of the wellness programs. That includes the Southern Ohio Survivors Reindeer Run, which I believe is December 4th, maybe, a Thursday, something close to that. As well as there's a little more cajoling for the weight monitoring aspect, which began last week, in which all the employees had to go weigh in, and they need to maintain or lose weight during the holiday season. It was a delicate task to encourage everybody to participate, but as I mentioned, 100%. So my appreciation. And those wellness programs, as a further aside, they really are beneficial. I think studies show that, you know, when people are aware of their health and participate in those kind of things, there is ultimately savings. So that was my long way of saying I would encourage you to waive the 3-read rule and pass number 5 tonight. We already touched briefly on 6. I think that's resolved. Number 8 is a big one. We've sort of held off as long as we could, but this is sort of an omnibus request to get us through the end of the year. It includes a variety of departments, multiple funds, and accounts for extra spending, unanticipated spending during the year in terms of anything from retirements to overtime, a bond payment, et cetera, et cetera. And so that one I would request the waiver of the 3-read rule. There was even an addition between the time it was requested and actually went to the law director to increase it, and that increase is included in front of you. We have had a couple rollover requests since this was added, even to, not to the agenda, but went before the law director. I'm hopeful that with this request, we get through the end of the year, but I won't rule out one final request. So, again, I would ask for your support in waiving the 3-read rule on that tonight. I did have a question on item 2 from Councilwoman Patrick tonight on just how that reimbursement worked out, and I will work to get an answer before the next meeting, so that is thoroughly covered. And then a few other topics tonight. Before the meeting, I circulated what I would call a crib sheet on the CCA program. It's a little bit longer than most crib sheets. That program, as you'll recall, follows the amnesty program we ran last summer. This is sort of the teeth behind that amnesty program. We expect those letters to be mailed this Wednesday. And I'm guessing that you may get some calls. I'm sure that we will in the income tax department. This is the best I could do to concisely report to you information that you may want to report to your constituents. Privacy is a big deal in this program, and consequently, our office doesn't know who the letters get mailed to, and we don't have any specific account information. So we are more than happy to verify the validity of this program, answer general questions. So for example, somebody gets a letter that says, our records reflect that you paid your IRS taxes, and maybe it looks like you should have paid City of Chillicothe in 2010. Somebody calls us and says, did I pay in 2010? We can answer that question. Beyond that, specific account details about their IRS information, we can't answer. They'll have to call the City of Cleveland. That'll be in the letter. There was an article in the Gazette. We're going to do Facebook. As much of anything, we really want to try and get the word out. This isn't we tried a lot during the amnesty program, and we're going to try a lot now, but this isn't any sort of punishment. But it's essentially making sure that everybody who should be paying is in our database and complying. So I anticipate questions. I anticipate some frustration. We will do our best to respond. And any council members or any specific constituents have questions they want to direct to me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But this will be probably of note in the coming months. The envelopes are light green. They come from the CCA. It might look like a scan. There's a draft letter on the back. But again, more than happy to answer any questions that you want to direct towards us. But hopefully we can get the awareness out. It's kind of been a long time coming. But here it comes. With that, I believe my report is concluded.
Thank you, Auditor Feeney. That brings us to audience participation. Give your name and address. Council Rule 21 limits each speaker to 5 minutes and each subject to 15.
Hi, my name is Barney Goodwin. I retired from the city of Chillicothe in 2008 as your service superintendent after 30 years.
Could you give me your address?
Sure, 91 Foreman Lane, Waverly, Ohio.
Thank you.
I count it a privilege to be able to speak before you tonight, just as I speak with a lot of gratitude in my heart for the 30 years employment working for you folks and for the food that put on my table and that of my family. So everything I say is in good faith and from the heart. I'd like to read something. I'll start by reading just a paragraph here. I got brain lock. I forgot my EEO officer's name all of a sudden. Tamara Lowe. For the past 19 years, Tamara Lowe has been like the sixth man on a basketball team. When needed, she filled whatever position necessary. Words like invaluable and irreplaceable will follow her. When she, now this isn't about Tamara Lowe. This was Lawrence Brown. And the year was November 19th, 1986. Chillicothe was that. This came from my own archive, so on the scrapbook. A week ago, you held a committee meeting here. During that committee meeting, Mayor Everson made a proposal. And in that proposal, he proposed eliminating the EEO position or laying off the EEO director, Tamara Lowe, and consolidating the duties with Ms. Bockert, the human resource director. What Mayor Everson did not tell you at the time was that afternoon he had already issued, right after the civil service meeting, he had already issued a layoff letter to Tamara Lowe, effective December 31st. Now, I can let everybody else deal with the, I'm not going to here to grind this into people in terms of how he carried this, how he did this. But I don't think that we all let this stand. And there's a whole lot of us in this community, and I still consider myself part of this community, that will not sit still for this. This is a very, very important position for not just the city of Chillicothe, but for Ross County, and actually even for surrounding counties. It's an this position is an ambassadorship. This position reflects a lot of success, I think, over the years. Now, I'll say this. I believe, I'm not going to say that there's a racial issue here. My wife, when I was bouncing this off my wife says, are you prepared to play a race card here in this? And I said, no. But I do think there's an agenda here. And I think that this needs to be looked at very, very carefully. And in doing so, I would recommend that every council person in this room meet with Tamara Lowe, discuss her duties with her personally, find out what her day has been and what the last 20 years have been, and how successful this has been, and how it's broadened. It's not just DEO. This has brought, yes, it's fair housing also, which is a very important thing here. And then there are other duties that were even expanded, I believe, by Mayor Planton, if I remember correctly. And so and let me back up a second now. Because I mentioned the word success that we had. People have said, you know, you have a lot of communities right now, and it's probably right now they're having the press conference about about Ferguson, Missouri. I think that was scheduled for 8 o'clock, 7 their time. All right, and a lot of communities, I think this one too, but I won't name names, has said, you know, what do we need to do to study this and look at what happened there, and look forward to prevent a Ferguson, Missouri, and a Chillicothe, Ohio, or Ross County, Ohio. That's always a good.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. That is always a good question. But I think that we need to look back upon the success in the EEO office that was established with Lawrence Brown as the first EEO officer under Mayor Clark Alexander. And this came, by the way, folks, when there was riots in the South End, and officers were getting accused of police brutality and knocking heads with nightsticks that are no longer used, and officers were getting hit in the heads with full beer bottles. I know. So all this, we can look back now. We've had how many years since 1978 when this program was started? How successful it has been, even it has been gutted by Mayor Everson over the last couple of years. And our EEO officer banished to the transit building from the administration building. Ferguson, Missouri. Here's my research on it. He mentioned 50 or 53 communities that he surveyed last week. All right? Did he survey Ferguson, Missouri? I did. A population almost to the number identical to Chillicothe, Ohio. Almost to the number, 21,203, I think we're a little more than that. Guess what? This is neat, you'll like this. They have the same 2 cabooses at the head of their park that we do. I mean, really, when I saw that, I thought, hey, I'm on the right track. EEO officer, no results there. They don't have it. Look where they are. Folks, I think you need to look at the history of this office, the people who've been in it that have been stellar, and how they represented this community and brought this community together, black and white employees and administration, and I can't say enough about them. I worked with them. You know, I worked next to Lawrence Brown for those years until he went out to be deputy warden out at the prison. You know, that was success, folks. And at the risk of being redundant, I think I'll just stop there. Talk to Tamara. Do not let this happen. Please, do not let this happen. Thank you very much for the privilege of letting me speak before you. And
Thank you.
my phone number's there. You know, I've been in this business a long time. I'll answer any questions or help the city any way I can.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
My name's still the same, Terry Williams. I reside at 371 Plymouth Lane in the 1st Ward. I also pastor a church, as many of you know, in the 1st Ward, Orchard Hill United Church of Christ. We are the denominational descendants of the Pilgrims, so our Thanksgiving holiday that's coming along is always a time of great joy, and it's always a time of great introspection as well, especially for those of us who are members of the church who draw our lineage back to those who came over on the Mayflower. We bear in our bodies the witness of what genocide and racism can do in a culture and a society. Our forebears did terrible things because they believed that God directed them to come to this place and that God had blessed them over others who had darker skin and who looked different, who behaved different, who had different culture than they did. We in the United Church of Christ try to reconcile that heritage every day. And one of the ways that we reconcile that heritage is by promoting equal opportunity policies within our church and advocating them within the greater society and the greater world. I would greatly urge you, I know that the budget's tight. I believe very strongly, Mayor Everson, that you're trying desperately to reconcile a loss of funds with an overburdened budget. But I would plead with you and with this council to try whatever you can to save this position. You know, this position is not about Tamara Lowe, even though she's a fine public servant, been with the city many years. This isn't even a race issue as much as it is an issue of fairness and an issue of excellence. We understand that other cities don't necessarily have this position that are the same size as us. Well, with all due respect, there are a lot of things Chillicothe has that cities our size don't. And that's why we're here. We feel in the churches, I feel as an individual pastor, that our commitment in this city to at least allowing there to be a position that looks out for the equality not only of race issues, but also of individuals with disabilities, individuals who may not receive the kind of regard or the kind of recognition that they deserve. Having that position is key and critical to the future of Chillicothe. If we're willing to let that go, if we're willing to start cutting there as opposed to any other place in the budget, then we admit that we're really not interested in a future here in Chillicothe. We're interested in surviving, and a surviving that really isn't maintaining the best of who we are. A surviving that's letting go of a lot of what makes us the great place, the great city to live and to be in. I'd appeal to you on behalf of the wider membership of my church, on behalf of myself as a minister, on behalf of all of the citizens of Chillicothe who need equal opportunity representation. I would plead with you to try to save this position. We can crunch these numbers, folks. We can find a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Okay, that brings us to old business. Mrs. Gray.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Pro Tem President. I would just like to say thank you to my fellow council member, Nancy Ames, and to your group that you brought together. I heard nothing but good things about what's going on in the park. My son came home over the weekend, and I drove through the park, and he was just astounded of not only what was in the park, but driving through the downtown area. And he said, it makes me proud to be from Chillicothe, and that it really gave him a hometown feel. And so I just want to say thank you, kudos to what you started. Good job.
Thank you, Mrs. Gray. Anyone else? Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, President Crutchell. Yeah, I wanted to pick up on a point that our last council meeting, I think Mr. Barnhart came in and was talking about the garbage trucks being out there pretty early in the morning, well before sunlight. I'm hoping that we do end up with a policy that these trucks will not be on the road until it is light out. Do we have an official policy like that now, Mayor?
No, we just alternate the times for 6 o'clock in the summertime to 7 o'clock in the wintertime. So they are out before sun up on them anyway.
I think we need to really look at that. I didn't realize that we were out there in the dark, especially in the wintertime when it is so late, so much traffic is in there. If you're there at 5:30 in the morning where there's not a lot of traffic, But you're out there at 7:30 and it's pitch dark. That's not a good thing at all for the safety of our citizens, the safety of our workers. They are darting in and out of traffic. So I wouldn't. I really hope we come up with a policy that says our garbage trucks will not officially hit the road until it is light out, which usually is about 15 minutes before sunrise, give or take. So I'd like to come up with that policy. I really don't want to see those trucks out there when it's dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Anyone else? Brings us petitions and correspondence received by the clerk.
I have nothing to report, Mr. President Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you. We have new business. Anyone? Mrs. Ames.
Thank you. I have 2 items for new business tonight. The Parks and Rec Department is sponsoring its annual holiday decorating contest. This year, there will be only a home decorating category, not business. To enter, send an email with your name, address, and telephone number to dave.tenor@ci.chillicothe.oh.us. Put decorating contest in the subject line. You may also call the Parks and Rec Department at 772-5626 with the same information. There will be no callbacks. All entries must be received by Thursday, December 4th at 4:30 p.m. Judging will take place on Friday, December 5th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. First prize will be 1 free park shelter rental. Second place will receive 6 one-day individual pool passes. Third place will be 4 one-day individual pool passes. All the winning homes will be featured on the Holiday Light Bus Tour. And in that regard, Transit Director Melissa Gibbons has announced the annual Holiday Lights Bus Tour schedule. New this year, the tour will include driving through Yaktangi Park to view Light the Park. Tours will leave the municipal parking lot, and I believe this was put out incorrectly. They will leave the municipal parking lot on Water Street on December 8th through 11th, Monday through Thursday at 6 o'clock and 7:30 p.m. each night. Tickets for the tours are available at the Transit Department, or it's still available, seating is available on the night of the event. And you can call the Transit Department 773-1569 for information. And that includes my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Ames. Anyone else in new business? That brings us to committee assignments and meeting dates. Assignment 14-149 is Finance Committee. Request for legislation making various appropriations for the purpose of making payroll, fringes, pension, and bond payments for the remainder of 2014. Assignment 14-150, Human Resources Committee, a request for legislation to suspend the maximum hours for 1 part-time security officer in the municipal court for the remainder of 2014. Assignment 14-151 is to Finance Committee, a request for council to look into imposing a motor vehicle license fee for all vehicles licensed inside the city limits. Assignment 14-152 is Engineering Committee, a request for legislation to approve ODOT project PID 97103. This legislation would authorize ODOT to inspect all bridges within the city limits of Chillicothe. Assignment 14-153 is the Engineering Committee, a request for legislation to change general fund line item titled Electrician Salary to Parking Enforcement Salary. Assignment 14-154 is the Engineering Committee, a request for legislation to change 2nd Street from one-way to two-way from Mulberry to Walnut. Assignment 14-155 is the Engineering Committee, a request for legislation to change existing ordinance concerning parking meter placement on 2nd Street to reflect meter placement recommendations made by Downtown Development Commission Phase 1 parking proposal. Assignment 14-156 is to Utilities Transit. Committee request for resolution authorizing the city to enter into a contract with ODOT and accept $14,727 from ODOT Elderly and Disabled Transit Fare Assistance Program. Assignment 14-157 is Utilities Transit Committee, a request for legislation to transfer $15,000 from transit payroll into transit vehicle repair. 14-158 is the Human Resource Committee, a request for legislation to appropriate $7,968 from unappropriated general fund to miscellaneous employee rewards. Assignment 14-159, Human Resource Committee, a request for legislation to eliminate an assistant fire chief, and a police captain position. And that concludes that, which brings us to legislation. Item 1 is not to be read, and item 2.
Second reading of an ordinance authorizing the transfer of Parks and Recreation capital funds for costs related to the replacement of a damaged Parks and Recreation desk and computer, and declaring emergency. Second reading.
Item 3.
First reading of an ordinance accepting and appropriating the sum of $3,127.27 received as payment of a depreciated CHIP grant land held by the City of Chillicothe. First reading.
Mrs. Ames,
I move to waive the three reading rule, please.
second by Mrs. Gray. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Motion passes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Item 4.
First reading of an ordinance amending ordinance number 60-14, extending the hiring period of 2 part-time seasonal employees from, quote, until October 31, 2014, unquote, to, quote, until December 31, 2014, unquote, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Item 5.
First reading of an ordinance appropriating $7,968 for the city's wellness program through United Healthcare and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mrs. Gray,
I respectfully request that we waive the three reading, please.
second by Mrs. Ames. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Item 6.
First reading of an ordinance transferring funds from civil service salaries and fringes to civil service outside contracts for the purpose of adequately funding the Civil Service Commission for the remainder of calendar year 2014 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Item 7.
First reading of an ordinance amending section 118.01 of the codified ordinances of the City of Chillicothe, providing for the creation of the position of Deputy Treasurer within the Treasurer's Office. First reading.
Item 8.
First reading of an ordinance appropriating funds for the purpose of making payroll, fringe, pension, and bond payments for the remainder of 2014 and declaring an emergency. First reading.
I'd like the motion to waive the 3 reading rule. Second by Mr. Bonner. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutchell.
Yes. Item 9.
First reading of an ordinance to temporarily suspend the maximum hours established for one part-time security officer for the Chillicothe Municipal Court as established by section 151.02 of the codified ordinances of Chillicothe, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes, sir. President Pro Tem, I would like to request that we waive the 3 reading rule this time.
Roll call.
Second.
Second. Second by Mrs. Ames. Sorry. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Showman,
Yes.
Tatman,
Yes.
Trutville,
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames,
Yes.
Bonner,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Neal,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Showman,
Yes.
Tatman,
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. Item 10,
First reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a contract between the city of Chillicothe and the Ohio Department of Transportation, accepting $14,727 in grant funds from ODOT and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mrs. Patrick,
I'd like to make a motion to waive the three-read rule.
second by Mr. Bonner. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. It passes.
On the ordinance.
Ordinance on the,
Roll call.
roll call on the ordinance.
Okay. Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. Item 11,
First reading of an ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds in the amount of $15,000 from bus salaries to vehicle repair within the transit department and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Mrs. Patrick,
I'd like to make a motion to waive the three-read rule.
second by Mr. Kroll. Roll call on the motion.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. Roll call on the ordinance.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. Do we have a motion for adjournment? Mrs. Grail, second by Mrs. Ames. Roll call.
Ames.
Yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Showman.
Yes.
Tatman.
Yes.
Trutville.
Yes. Thank you.